of the storm.
How many
So
strings do you think Vince would have to pull to get SummerSlam on Liberty Island, where the Statue of Liberty is? Wouldn't that
a
be
lot of
crazy?
strength. But I don't think it's necessarily a terrible idea because obviously with tourism down, nobody's going to those locations anyway. I actually do think that it's not a bad idea because if you can find the right location, I think you can have a scenario where you avoid people going to that area, right? And obviously the boat idea makes sense because you're isolated in the middle of the ocean. And
So the
who
boat
knows
thing might be a
where,
little tough because the Jericho cruise and AEW works because it was on a cruise ship. There's a lot of space. They
right?
could set up. They have wires. We're talking about Vince is going to have to, get somebody's yacht or something, and I just don't know if it's large enough to hold all those people.
Right.
I would think if it's on a boat, it's probably going to be docked when they film this, and then they'll just show like shots of it sailing, like aerial views.
Yeah,
Like
I totally agree with that. And
so
I do think it's a problem too.
I think I want to see it on a beach. I think that would be a cool setting. SummerSlam used to always be called the biggest party of the summer, and they used to do those great promos back in the day, Dan, like on the beach, and that was always fun. So, what would your preference be between a boat or a beach, or do you prefer to just stay in the Performance Center?
Listen, like you guys said before, the Performance Center, I think they've done as good a job as they could have done, especially with all the circumstances. But I'm definitely ready for a different atmosphere, especially for WWE shows. So whether a boat or beach, I think aesthetically the beach would be much cooler. I don't know, if it's a windy day with sand, like those logistics, I guess, would have to be worked out. But I guess if I had to pick one or the other, I definitely prefer the beach more so than the boat.
Yeah, the only issue with the beach, Joe, is it's hard to do any Raw Underground matches because everybody would be on the same level. Nobody would be able to go underground.
So are we going to transition now and talk about Raw Underground? Because I have a lot of thoughts about this.
Well, before
good,
we do
few
that,
bad.
while we're on SummerSlam, thoughts on Dominic Mysterio going to make his debut taking on Seth Rollins? How do you think this one's going to play out? And Dan, do you think Dominic Mysterio is going to be in WWE for the long haul and he maybe signed a contract potentially? And if so, does the NXT class or the current people in NXT get annoyed that he surpasses NXT and goes straight to SummerSlam?
Now, listen, I know I said this before, so I don't want you guys to get mad at me, but like I said, I am optimistic when it comes to this stuff. I try to be. Obviously, I'll admit when there's the bad stuff, but I think I've been a fan of Dominic since Survivor Series when he did the run-in when it was Rey Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar.
That was a great match.
It was a great match, and when he came in, man, the crowd was going nuts. He had some great, he did the great frog splash. He fired up really well, and every time he comes out on TV, man, if he's swinging the kendo stick or a chair, he's hurting people with that. I think he's got definitely something. I think Seth Rollins is a great person to put him up against because, Seth Rollins is probably in my opinion, one of the best overall wrestlers in the world, just in terms of he could do pretty much everything. So I think that's a great opponent. I could totally see Dominic winning, especially because, these circumstances, there's no fans. Who's really going to, freak out and boo anyway, except for, like we said before, the internet fans. So I'm really excited for Dominic. I don't know if people get upset about the NXT thing. I feel like he definitely has a place on the main roster. I'm one of those guys who have really been hoping for some new blood. So I think
Vince has been looking for a Rey Mysterio replacement since 2010. So I don't know if there's anybody better than his son to be the Rey Mysterio replacement moving forward because they keep trying with these guys. A lot of guys have potential, but some of them just aren't panning out. Del Rio, he didn't work out as they anticipated, and staying with someone in that role. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dominic wins because otherwise the whole storyline doesn't make sense. Like there's no it was very one-sided. Seth won everything. And, that's the marquee match there. Joe, you get Orton versus McIntyre, which should be absolutely horrendous, but I think Orton's going to win. We're not going to see Brock Lesnar, which is a little surprising, but it makes sense because why waste Lesnar not in front of the audience? And then you're going to probably see The Fiend taking on Braun Strowman. And unfortunately, I think The Fiend's going to win. But that's going to be okay as long as Otis ends up cashing in on The Fiend, Joe, and becomes the Universal Champion.
I don't think that's going to happen just yet. I think they're going to hold off on that. What I will say is I have enjoyed the Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt feud, and I think the insertion of Alexa Bliss is quite possibly one of the best things that they could have ever done, because I do think that there's money in potentially pairing Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss up again, and I do think that both of them could use some character tweaks, and to do it at the same time at this point would be very, very smart. They worked together in the Mixed Match Challenge. They were arguably one of the more popular teams, along with The Miz and Asuka, and I remember Sasha Banks and Finn Balor were very popular. Those were definitely three of the popular duos when they did it, right? And Mixed Match Challenge, I actually think was a huge success. I remember watching it on Facebook, so definitely going to be interesting. Otis,
yeah. Otis needs to cash in at like the first event with people in the audience, because if he cashes in, like, the WrestleMania moment with Otis was great, but imagine him kissing Mandy Rose, Dan, in front of 80 to 90,000 people. How crazy would that have been?
This WrestleMania, there were a lot of those, what if they were fancier? Like you said, Drew McIntyre, the Braun Strowman win. I mean, I wish there were fans for this WrestleMania. This was also one in for, I don't remember how long. Besides, I mean, I don't count Brock because at least he wrestles all the time, but there weren't, I don't think, any part-timers really on this roster at all, in terms of, like, there wasn't, besides Undertaker, of course, but, like, Triple H didn't wrestle. They didn't bring anybody in.
That was it.
Goldberg, yeah, you're right, too. Damn, I did forget about him. But at least he put over Braun. That was good. But, the Otis thing now, I was a big fan back then. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Maybe he caught COVID. I don't want to speculate, but he was missing for a good while. And now,
him and Mandy,
I don't know,
both off TV.
Yeah. Mandy, Sonya, there were a lot of people missing. Liv Morgan, I mean, there was a good chunk of people, but I don't want to say the ship has sailed, but personally for me, and like I said before, I'm an optimist, I'm going to go the opposite way. I don't know. I kind of lost the appeal on Otis. I mean, it would be great to see him cash in just because those moments are always cool, but I'm not dying for it either,
So I think, some of the worst bookings since WrestleMania has been Otis, who was really not done much on TV. Then you have The Miz, who is really getting hunkered down by Morrison. I mean, Miz is going from, like, last year, big face, taking on Shane McMahon in New Jersey at WrestleMania. And before that, he's carrying the company with the Intercontinental title. Now he's, like, doing Miz TV with John Morrison, which I think is bad. And the other thing is Elias, I guess he's hurt, but he gets in a car. He gets hit by a car. The hacker mysteriously disappears. There's no footage of the hacker who ran over Elias. We're assuming, Joe, that it was Sheamus, but nobody's followed up on that. There's been no arrest made. And is Elias going to just come back and randomly see him playing his guitar backstage, or is he going to come back and attack his attacker and go on to his big push, which is long overdue? I mean, Elias, they named the company after him, WWE. Walk with Elias. This guy needs to be a world champ. Same with The Miz. And yet, I don't know what's going on with these guys right now.
All right, we're going to address this one by one very quickly. The Miz, I think this is probably a scenario where he's doing more at home. Obviously, he's got 2 girls now.
Filming Mrs. Mrs. Season 2.
That's right, and my mom watches it, and it's one of the best reality shows. She loves it. She follows both on Instagram. I just think that's a scenario where The Miz is starting to get to the point of his life.
So you think the end is near for The Miz?
And very, very. I wouldn't say the end. He's still going to be around WWE for the next couple of years. I think he's going to eventually end up doing what Samoa Joe has done and transition.
Without a doubt. Well, Samoa Joe, I think, is going to wrestle a guy. Dora's going to see it on Raw. But The Miz is going to be the color commentator on Raw or SmackDown and every big pay-per-view as soon as he decides he doesn't want to wrestle anymore. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's nobody better than him.
No, absolutely. And I think with Elias, you're going to see him call 1-800-FELLA when he comes back. I didn't come up with that on my own. That was Frank in our Facebook group, but it's the truth. It's going to be Elias and against Sheamus once he does return.
All right, so those are big storylines. And the other thing that they're holding off on, it looks like, is Bayley versus Sasha, which makes sense because Sasha, she'll be the big face. She needs to have that match in front of people as well.
That's going to happen at WrestleMania next year.
They were going to do it at SummerSlam. So I
get
guess,
back.
Dan, do you think we're going to see Sasha all belts?
I don't know. It looks like they're willing to go the distance with these guys. And you know what? Some weeks I could find Bayley and Sasha a little over the top, but I think as a whole, they've been awesome in their role right now. I think the subtle storytelling that the WWE has been doing over this period of them feuding has been great. Just like you'll see Sasha kind of stare at the belt for like 3 seconds around Bayley's waist, or she'll hold when she's standing on the outside. She always has the belt holding it, for Bayley. So I've really been enjoying it. At this point, the way they kind of use NXT, they've mixed WWE and NXT rosters, often, and as recent as Sasha and Bayley there not too long ago. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they give her that title just to add to the story. But a WrestleMania moment for both of them, I think, is deserving because they put in a lot of work. They've done a lot during this quarantine. I mean, now they're basically on every single show. So I think they definitely deserve that moment for them.
Certainly. I would think that's a main event level type of match there. And I don't know, Joe. I don't think Becky Lynch is really going to be coming back. Maybe she comes back for a match or two, but I'd still love to see Becky versus Charlotte versus Sasha versus Bayley with the title on the line. Wouldn't that be a big match? And don't forget that prior to coronavirus happening, the rumors were that Ronda Rousey was coming back. So she'll maybe be in the mix perhaps next year as well if things get back to any sort of normalcy.
So they failed me in not doing Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania when it was right there for them. It was a big match. To me, if they don't do the Charlotte versus Sasha versus Becky versus Bayley match at some point, you have failed me twice. That's how I feel about that.
And what about this, whole, they could do the 4 horsewomen versus the knockoff Rousey 4 horsewoman match. Is there anything there? I mean, yeah, everybody knows Rousey, but nobody cares about Shayna, and nobody can name the other two ladies in NXT. So I don't really see, unless they're doing some sort of Survivor Series match at some point.
Yeah, I feel like that is just a Survivor Series match. We've been seeing Shayna Baszler more on Raw lately, and I do think that there's a spot for her. I don't know if she's really, really top girl material, but I do think that she's a very solid wrestler, and she's a good heel, and she plays her role really, really well.
You know where there's a spot for her? Raw Underground, the women's division.
That's a great spot.
She could just take on a male or something. I don't know. I think, and I know you're a huge fan of Raw Underground with your guy Shane O'Mac. Shane O'Mac, by the way, awesome guy. Met him, talked to him on the field before the first XFL New York Guardians game. He was awesome, and he was very involved in the XFL, despite what people may have, known on the surface. He was very involved. And hopefully, Joe, we get Shane taking over WWE one day as the guy in charge. But he wants he brings in Raw Underground. You get Lashley, MVP, and Shelton Benjamin, Dolph Ziggler. You have that huge dude, I guess, who's in NXT, who is doing great. Maybe we'll see Tozawa's really tall ninja in there at some point. But they really didn't explain much. They just said, everything goes down here, and I guess the referee just decides when to stop it. I don't know. I know you're a big fan, so what are your thoughts on Raw Underground?
So, where do I start? Okay. So I'm going to send this to Dan afterwards because I really, really want to hear what he has to say. Obviously, he shares the same positive outlook on stuff that they do like I do, right? So the first thing is it's different, right? Fans come online, complain, do something different, right? Now they're doing something different. I'm willing to see how it goes. I think that it's a good concept because you mentioned Shelton Benjamin. You saw Dolph Ziggler doing it yesterday. I think it's a good place to prolong careers for the veterans and then to bring new guys from the Performance Center into the fold. So I think that's a good place for them. I like that it's got a very Fight Club type of feel to it. And I do think that production value, you see sort of a Lucha Underground, like a Wrestling Society X, which was once upon a time on MTV.
Great
type
show.
of feel to it too. So it's interesting. It's different than WWE usually shoots. And this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about, but when it comes to Shane McMahon, and obviously he's your boy, Nick,
Yes.
great guy,
No
taking
doubt about
pictures
it.
with you and everything. So once upon a time,